Off the western edge of Scotland, where the Atlantic never quite rests, sits a ragged chain of 7 small islands, known as the Flannan Isles. One of them, Eilean Mòr, rises from the sea like a slab of stone dragged up from the deep, and perched on that rock is a lighthouse. That lighthouse is where this story lives. But long before anything went wrong there, Eilean Mòr already had a reputation. The island was never truly empty. At any given time, it held 3 or 4 lighthouse keepers and sheep. Sheep herders would occasionally visit, and those were the people who first began whispering about the place. They talked about strange sounds, about the feeling of being watched, about an unease that crept in the moment their boots hit the ground. Even visitors who had never heard a single story about the island would later say the same thing. Something about Eilean Mòr felt wrong. At the center of the island sat the Church of St. Flannan, a small stone structure with a peculiar effect on anyone who entered it. People reported an overwhelming urge to pray, as if something invisible were pressing them to their knees. The sensation was so strong that a ritual developed. When visitors arrived on the island, it was customary to drop to their knees outside the church and crawl around it before entering, praying the entire time. Strange island, strange rules, and a mood that never quite lifted. That was the setting in December of 1900. One day, a steamboat passed the Flannan Isles and noticed something alarming. The light on Eilean Mòr was out, completely dark. When the ship reached port 3 days later, authorities were notified immediately. Coincidentally, it was already time to rotate the lighthouse keepers stationed there. Captain James Harvey was assigned the task. He gathered his crew and brought along Joseph Moore, a replacement lighthouse keeper. Their mission was simple: check on the men, change the guard, and restore operations if needed. As their ship approached Eilean Mòr, they watched the massive stone staircase carved into the island. Tradition dictated that the keepers would come down to greet arriving crews and prepare the dock for landing. No one appeared. The dock was unprepared. No ropes laid out, no signs of life. The closer they got, the worse the silence felt. Captain Harvey ordered Moore to go ahead and perform a quick inspection. The rest of the crew stayed behind, as Moore began climbing the long, steep staircase alone. Later, he would say he felt a growing sense of dread with every step, as if the island itself were watching him approach. When he reached the top, the damage became clear. Steel railings along the staircase were bent and twisted, folded over as if made of soft metal. Nearby, a massive boulder that had sat unmoved for years had been dragged across the grass, leaving a visible trail behind it. Moore assumed the island had been battered by an unimaginable storm. He reached the lighthouse. The door was closed, but unlocked. Inside, he called out. No response. On the wall hung oilskin jackets. One was still there. Lighthouse keepers never went outside without them. Never. In the kitchen, plates of meat sat untouched on the table. Pickles had been taken from a jar. Chairs were knocked over. The clocks had stopped. Upstairs, the beds were unmade. Another violation of strict lighthouse custom. Everything suggested the men had left suddenly. Moore returned to Captain Harvey with his findings. Together, they searched the island. Harvey sent a telegram to the mainland stating that a dreadful accident had occurred and that the 3 keepers had vanished, likely swept into the sea during a storm. Then they found the logbook. Most entries were routine until December 12th. That day, the lead keeper wrote of violent winds unlike anything he had seen in decades. He noted fear. He noted that one man was praying constantly, while another was crying uncontrollably. This was shocking. The man described as crying was known on the mainland as one of the toughest sailors alive. Entries from the 13th and 14th grew darker. All 3 men were praying. They believed they would not survive. Then came December 15th. Storm ended. Sea is calm. God is over all. Investigators later theorized that after the storm ended, the men went down to the dock to assess the damage. A massive rogue wave may have swept them away. But there was one problem. People on the Scottish mainland said there had been no storm. None at all. Visibility had been perfect. They could see parts of Eilean Mòr rarely visible, even in ideal conditions. So what storm were the men describing? In the years that followed, new keepers were stationed at the lighthouse. Many reported hearing voices on the island. Voices calling out the names of the three men who never came home. And to this day, whatever happened on Eilean Mòr remains unsolved.